Hello, I'm Kate Thomas, Senior Marketing Manager here at Core. Joining me for another interview is Eric Lynn, Head of Sony's IoT Tracking Division. Eric, it's great to have you again here.
Thank you, and likewise, Kaylee. Wonderful to catch up during the summertime.
Yeah, we can cool down with a nice conversation about critical asset monitoring.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the market landscape for supply chain visibility in some of the previous videos. And the logistics industry itself is in very much high demand for a comprehensive solution. You know, they don't want to go to like 3-4 different people. They want to go to one person who has the solution for them. And once a business has invested in that IoT asset tracking solution, you know, a lot of it is the analytics and the data that they can get from that solution. So what information will those companies have access to that they might not have had access to before?
I think in lack of better, maybe let's use a military term. Basically, as a company, you achieve what I would call situational awareness using a visibility solution, which means that you get, real time or as near as real time as you can get location, understanding of location, understanding of the progress against a plan or logistics plan. You get insight into condition data. So that means, what is happening in the environment of your transport that might have an impact of your goods. And, you get an immediate, understanding very quickly on, what works and what does not work, with some fair pointers on, what are the causes or potentially even root causes for those things that go astray. And the alternative to that is, traditional track and trace solutions that most logistic providers do offer in some shape or form. But this is checkpoint dependent. So, when there's a cargo moving through a certain port, a certain gate, a certain terminal, where they have an ability to check it in and out, which is not really in real time. At best, it's indicative, and it only gives a partial picture. It definitely does not sort of encompasses everything, both in terms of location against plan, as well as the condition monitoring aspect of what a visibility solution does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes great sense. And, when these organizations look at these sorts of solutions, they're going to put a business case together, right? And a lot of that is, what are we going to achieve in the short to medium term? What are we going to achieve in the long term that sort of brings that ROI back? So this is a two-part question, really. But what are some of those best practices for how a business can use this data and analytics in the short term that helps their business case to be put forward to get that budget?
I think that we probably have to sort of break it up in a few components. Also understand what is the business case, because as we talked about last time, there are multiple drivers for wanting to have this insight. Depending on the type of goods or classification of what it is that you are transporting or moving, right? But really, first of all, short term, is getting an immediate understanding of what is going on, making decision and correction on that basis. That's sort of the baseline. But then again, talking about short term, I would like to sort of frame that, and what does real-time data give you that you can work with? And I say that you work with a risk management aspect of your transport, and you're looking, for example, for, am I seeing deviation to the plan for high value goods? What might that impact? And I've talked a few times about a case from within Sony when we looked at the PlayStation 5 launch distribution last year. It was very, very imperative to understand if anything was happening that could indicate there might be a theft or anything like that. Being able to understand, will my transport arrive at a terminal or warehouse distribution center within the opening hours or not within the opening hours? If not, then I need to make alternative plans. The second aspect is if you talk about sort of the aspect of time sensitivity, where you're looking at, the deviation, or am I seeing deviation to my plan? Am I seeing deviation that means that what I expected to arrive into a manufacturing process will arrive or will not arrive? For me to take corrective actions for that, use backup stock, and so on and so forth. And we're seeing a number of our customers, very much here in Europe, that are working with aftermarket logistics, spare part logistics. Very much for them, this is critical to be able to control the time aspect of it, because if things do not arrive on time, it might actually mean that you have a whole manufacturing process that grinds to a halt. The last aspect, the last business case where this real-time aspect is important, is actually a case that we are doing together in the US within the medtech environment, where the company wants to understand, are there any, we talked about environmental impact, something that could cause damage, right? They want to understand, has there been anything happening during the transport before final installation and handover that could indicate that for example, the calibration is off, which of course for medical equipment is highly, highly important, right? That you can trust the readings for that. So those are some of the the real-time aspects that companies are working with, which are very much short-term, but also a part of your, when I say short-term, of your day-to-day business. Then taking the sort of the second part of your question in terms of the long term, and you sort of already hinted to what it is. You have data, real data accumulated that gives you a trusted insight on which you can perform analytics, where you can start to understand patterns of your transport. You can start to look for alternatives. And I'll give you an example with a company within the automotives. It's actually also within sort of the spare part logistics, but they have a number of parts that are very sensitive. They're seeing a high degree of damages to their products, and they don't understand why. They don't know why. This insight gives them an opportunity to understand by using these types of transport, these types of vendors or carriers. Am I using road? Am I using sea? Am I using rail? Or any combination of those? This is where we're seeing the damage is happening. This is where we're seeing deviation to patterns, and so on and so forth, to continue to improve and understand, improve what you're doing, and understand where you can actually achieve new alternatives to how you've been doing business so far. And the second aspect, and that's where we actually have come across companies that are using high volume, even high volume, relatively low quality, not low quality, excuse me, low valued products, where simply due to the vast volumes of products that are being distributed, for them to work with this insight to understand and pinpoint, we're seeing a distribution center where we typically have underutilized gates. We are seeing certain vendors that have a typically, a late arrival or even an early arrival to the gate, and have a mismatch between readiness and availability, and many aspects of that, where you can work with further fine-tuning, further optimizing your supply chain. Coming back to your questions, what is driving the long-term ROI of working with, as you call it, critical asset management? We would probably call it a visibility solution, but we both mean the same thing, right? So the insight, whether it's in the moment to take immediate action or corrective actions of what is happening, or as well as working with pattern recognition, working with vendor performance management, and so on and so forth, are really some of the drivers that you're getting through trusted real-time insight and data that you own, that you can work with, and you can analyze with, that you can integrate into your other ERP or TSM solutions.
Yeah,
TMS
absolutely.
solutions, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that sort of short-term, what the product's doing for you right now element. You know, you're transporting whatever goods you're transporting, and you want to make sure it gets from A to B, but in the condition that it started in, and it arrives in the same element. And the PlayStation analogy was great. And also I think about, you know, you talk about medtech and connected health, and you've got these big you know, cancer detection machines. They're £1 million a piece. You can imagine just from that, making sure it gets from place A to place B. Now that's a lot of money at stake. But then to your point around, you know, how do we build in that long-term value? I like the idea that, you know, it's the trends. You start to see, it's less about that immediate thing that we've done. How can we see the trends in the, I guess, the business process, not just the logistics element, but actually the operations that go around that truly brings the value into all the elements. It's quite a complex piece.
Absolutely, and we basically touched on the two aspects of, you know, typical engagements with many companies lie within the supply chain operations, because they have a direct pain that can be solved through a solution like Resilient. But based on the aggregated data, then you suddenly end up having a strong value to the supply chain planners as well. So you really, you know, you're bridging the full gap within the supply chain management discipline, whether it's, you know, the planning, execution, operation that you're working with, through, you know, very much helping companies to attack very specific pain points in the moment, but also strategically for them.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, Eric. This is some great information for businesses considering investing in these types of solutions. I think you've uncovered some great ideas how data and analytics is used in a really smart way that, you know, companies can realise their return on investment. Sometimes more data can be quite overwhelming, and, you know, supply managers don't know always what to do with this information. But I think the visualization tools that Resilient really bring helps that visibility and traceability of that entire journey of the shipment or package. You know, you talk about the supply chain, not just like the logistics element. And I think, you know, it's great being partnered with a team like yourself, from us providing sort of the cellular connectivity to allow that transfer of data. But the solutions that you guys bring in your hardware and your platform really provides that data and that insights to, you know, provide that tracking element. I just want to thank you so much for your insight, Eric. It's been great. And thank you for joining today's Quickfire interview. To those that have watched this video, want to watch the other videos, they're on YouTube, on the Core Wireless YouTube playlist. You can also find some more information at corewireless.com, or also reach out to Eric or myself or the core team, and we can arrange a demo so you can truly see how that platform really visualizes that data in an easy way. So thank you very much.
I say thank you to you as well, Kaylee, and to the core team as being a great partner with us.